Hello. Our group will be answering the following questions. How did the framers create our Constitution? We will be pleased to hear, and we hope you enjoy our presentation.
The framers at the Philadelphia Convention had some conflicting opinions that required them to make some compromises. One of the compromises was about their different feelings about slavery. Some thought that slavery should be abolished, while others, mostly the southern states, wanted to keep slavery. The framers had three questions to solve. 1. Should slavery still be allowed? 2. Should slaves be counted in the state's population? 3. What would happen to the slaves that ran away to a state that didn't have slavery? The delegates from the North and South decided on a compromise. The compromise allowed slavery to continue, and the slaves who escaped needed to be returned. The framers also agreed upon a 3/5 clause, which gave the South the right to count 3/5 of their slaves. This compromise allowed the southern states to support the Constitution.
Another major conflict the framers dealt with was how many representatives each state could send to Congress. The smaller states wanted as many votes as the bigger states, while the big states thought they should get more because they had a bigger power. The framers, a committee of framers, created the Great Compromise. The Great Compromise was resolved by setting up two houses, the House of Representatives and Senate. The House of Representatives have the number of representatives are based on population. The number of representatives from Senate are two representatives, so the states would be equal. This has now meant that in Senate, each state, no matter what said, would have the same exact power as the others, and in House of Representatives, the number of representatives would be based on population.
It was difficult for the framers to agree because they had so many people that would disagree with each other. The southern and northern states would usually disagree. They fought over the numbers of representatives were going to be chosen for Congress, if slaves would count in the population of a state, and if slavery would be abolished. The southern states wanted the representation to be chosen by population and the slaves to be counted in the state's population. The northern states thought that slaves should not be considered in the population of a state and slavery should be abolished. Because the framers each had their own personal agendas and opinions, it was very hard for the framers to make compromises that would have everyone be happy.
The compromise of adding the Bill of Rights affected our Constitution by giving individual rights to each citizen. The Constitution originally gave a lot of control to the federal government, but when the Bill of Rights was added, it gave more personal freedom to each individual. The Bill of Rights protected the natural rights of each citizen, such as life, liberty, and property. Also, the Bill of Rights gave the citizens something very important, the freedom of expression. With freedom of expression, citizens can have the freedom to speak openly, read or write without fear, discuss their opinions, and petition the government to make changes. The Bill of Rights affected the Constitution by creating a fair list of rights each citizen has and protected the U.S. citizens' rights while limiting the power of the government.
I agree that the convention had to be kept a secret, or else there might have been too many problems caused by the people. The delegates to the Philadelphia Convention, who were called the framers, wanted to speak freely about their ideas, and they didn't want other people's opinions to change things. Also, the framers were debating and arguing a lot about the Constitution at the convention, and they didn't want the rest of the citizens to know about the disagreements. Because of this, the framers decided to keep their meeting secret for 30 years. I think that this was a really good idea. Otherwise, the Constitution probably would have taken a lot longer to make, or maybe it would have been totally different.
I do not think that the group that assembled at the Philadelphia Convention was a fair representation of the people. The group of framers was not a complete representation of the people because the majority of the people were older white men who owned a lot of land. The people who were excluded were women, slaves, farmers, poor people, freed slaves, young people, and indentured servants. Rhode Island did not attend this convention because their leaders opposed a stronger government. I do not think it was fair because these people lived in the United States too, and their voices and opinions should have been heard. One of the reasons the Revolutionary War was started was because people were unhappy they did not have representation in the British government. When the framers had a chance to form government, they decided not to give all their own citizens representation. All types of people fought in the Revolutionary War to gain independence, so all types of people should have been involved in making the new government. I wonder how different our government would be today if it was made up of all types of people when the Constitution was made. Maybe we would even have a woman president by now.
We hope you enjoyed our presentation about how the framers wrote our Constitution. We worked very hard on our speeches. We thank you for our time. We look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Group 2.
555.
I do have some questions, but right now I can't think of them. I'll think of Sue. You talked about not having equal representation at the Philadelphia Convention, and because there were no women there were no African Americans there. Do you remember that we had some amendments added to the Constitution that would have helped protect those people's rights to vote? Does anybody know about any of those amendments? Okay, do you know that women got the right to vote in an amendment and finally in 1920? That was the 19th Amendment. And then African American people got the right to vote before that. So you have to kind of start with the right to vote before you can actually participate in government. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
As long as we're talking about voting, how many of you have ever gone to the polls with your parents when you have voted? And would you please tell me if you think you will be a voting adult, why or why not?
I think I will be a voting adult because it's participating in our government, and you want to help to make the right president or governor or whatever you're voting for, to make sure that your government is run smoothly and it's one more vote of what you would want.
Anybody else?
I think I would be a voting adult because I want my say in the government. I don't want everyone else's say and not my say to be in it because I want my opinions in it and I don't want just everybody else's.
Thank you.
I want to vote because I want my votes heard for the other people, and I want the person I think is best to win for the government. And like what Harper said, I don't want everyone else's votes heard, not mine.
Now I realize you're all not adults yet, so is there any way you can participate in government when you are a child? And if so, how?
You can go in your student body government, which is where your school or a classroom has a government and you can run for those elections. So you have those sort of governments, those mini governments for you to look at. You could also watch the news about the government and you can listen to what they're saying about the government. Like on the news, there's many things about how there's budget cuts in schools and how the teachers and parents are protesting.
You're right.
You can volunteer in community service things, like maybe an animal shelter, or maybe you can volunteer for student council in your school or something.
Okay, thank you. I heard the word compromise said by several of you. What does the word compromise mean?
It means you give some other person one thing, and then you give yourself, for example, one thing, and then it's you can compromise by giving one person something that is fair, and it's one thing. For example, you can, if you want to do a report on one president and another person wants to do a report on the same president as you, say it's Abraham Lincoln, then you can compromise by saying the other person can talk about how Abraham Lincoln lived in a log cabin, and you can talk about how he ran for president and so.
Okay, are there other examples in the classroom where you have to compromise?
Well, there's other examples in the classroom when you have to compromise. Let's say we say who wants to read and who wants to draw. Most likely some people are going to want to draw and some people are going to want to read. So you can have it so the people who want to read can read and the people who want to draw can draw.
And why is that a compromise?
Because both people are getting somewhat of what they want.
Okay, but I thought you said you had to give up something in order to come up with a compromise, and in that case, to me, it doesn't seem like anybody's giving up anything.
Well, the drawing people would have to be silent,
Oh, okay.
and the reading people couldn't talk around, so they wouldn't.
Yes?
I would also think when we have inside recess, maybe some people want to watch a movie and some people want to play games. So when you compromise, it could be for the first half you could watch a movie and for the second half you could play games.
That sounds like a good compromise. How does your classroom run? Do you have compromises, or do you have a teacher who tells you everything to do, or what?
Well, usually the teacher tells us what to do. Like for example, in the morning she wants us to take or
Okay,
like
that's okay. I went